Hey, welcome to my green pets. I'm William Green. Gonna look at orchid collection today. I'll just show you first of all my windowsill. Most of these are plants that are being plant sat for me, by me. A lot of succulents. Hoya down here. But I wanted to show you my Clavia miniata in bloom for the third time this year. So nice. Love it. Lots of flowers still coming. Alright, let's go head over to the tent. For all the astronomy fans out there, this past week was the equinox, and nights are officially longer than days now, and there are changes in these tropical orchids because of that daylight change, also because temperatures have been cooler. Even though this is in my apartment, shorter days means less intense sunlight. Temperatures don't get quite as warm here in the tent, and when it starts getting cold outside, the nights will be cooler. Daytime highs will also be cooler. So not by too much, but it's definitely enough to make the orchids realize that seasons are changing, and those that are seasonal, which is actually pretty much all of them are seasonal plants, we're seeing those changes happen now. All right, let's have a look at a few of them. So here we have Hal, Bulbophyllum mechanolabium. This is his 26th flower on this spike. If you can believe it, this spike started growing 2 years ago. And I think this is it. You can see this doesn't look like anything else is going to be growing out of there, but I keep thinking that, and then he still keeps growing them. So Hal is a champ when it comes to blooming. He's got another flower spike down here. It's kind of a new one. This is only the second flower on this spike. And always nice to see Hal in the winter. Well, in the fall and winter, temperatures are a little bit lower, so he's not quite as stinky, which is always a bonus as well. Catasetums definitely showing signs of late season. These are deciduous orchids, and you can see we have just in the past week started to see some yellowing here in the tips of this Mormodia jumbo world. This year's growth is spectacular. Never had it look this good. Could not ask for a better growing season for this plant this year. It's truly pristine. Zero problems. Zero problems. Last year, if you'll recall, I had spider mites on this plant. I sprayed it with 90% isopropyl alcohol and killed off a bunch of the leaves. No such problems this year. Really excited and truly expecting some very nice spikes on this plant in the next month or so. We also have a Cloecia Rebecca Northern. You can see yellowing on the leaves here. Cygnocase cooperi also swelling up, preparing for dormancy. Really happy with these little guys, and especially the fact that they're really small. Cygnocase One Delight is the fourth Catasetum that I have. It's over here. You can see the wind from the fan. The air from the fan is stronger over here, and it's interesting because it's actually, after I moved it over here because the sphagnum was just kind of staying wet and wasn't drying out very quickly, and you can see the bulb actually has dried up. So, and the roots don't look that great either. So they may not look super great. The little growth on it still looks fairly healthy. No brown tips or anything like that on the leaves. It's starting to swell, but it's definitely going to be smaller than that last bulb. So not expecting anything from this plant other than hopefully a relatively event-free dormancy, and then maybe next year it can try to put out a bigger growth. It still has roots in, you know, kind of visible in the bottom of the pot that seem okay. So I'm not too worried about it, but I did expect a bigger growth from it this year. I did not expect that older growth to just shrivel up. But I'm still not too worried about it because this year's growth still looks nice. I had this Cattleya walkeriana in a plastic pot, and the roots in the bottom of the pot were rotten and moldy. And I thought, you know what? It's not a good time, but I'm just going to get it out of there. So I put it into a clay pot instead, really shallow one. And I tried not to damage the roots. It is still actively rooting. You can see some living root tips down there. There's one. So I thought, well, as long as it's got actively growing roots, we might be able to get away with transferring it into a new pot without setting it back too much. I am looking down here, hoping that it is going to push out a spike, but now that it's been repotted, I don't expect anything really. I just hope that the root growth continues and that it's not too traumatized by being moved out of its pot. But I think it's going to be happier overall, having much more access to air and not being trapped in that plastic pot where water just kind of sits and rots the roots. Last week I told you this Bulbophyllum lepidum had a spike that had blasted. Well, if you look down there in the bottom, you can see that it has started a new spike. And that's great. Again, it's kind of pressed up against the wall of the plastic pot there. So who knows if it will actually make it to full blooming, but I'm happy that it's tried to bloom twice this year. Maybe it'll be successful with one of them. I've counted several little flower spikes on Bulbophyllum cattenulatum. You can see they're very, very small compared to my finger. Look at this, how small they are. But they're very cute, and it's nice that there's so many of them popping up. This one has been very, very easy. I just kind of keep it moist, plenty of air around it, and we should have some nice, cute little flowers from this guy soon. This Cattleya rex that was really plagued by snails. I submerged the whole pot all the way up to the tips of the leaves in a bucket of water about a month ago now, maybe longer. Got rid of lots of snails that way, and you can see the roots are really trying to recover. Lots of roots popping out there, and I'm just going to watch them carefully. I don't see snails, but I know they're in there. I just have to, I think what I'm going to be doing is just doing a full submerge in water for this plant every couple months, and just pick off all the snails that I can see, and hopefully at least we can keep their numbers down. I don't expect to ever get rid of them completely, but I'm okay with that. But it's really nice to see how the plant responds when finally it knows it's got a chance to grow roots out without them being eaten off. Next door to it, it's got one of its sisters that I have never seen a snail on, even though they're right next to each other. You can see these roots are growing out really nicely, and it's funny how snails will pick a plant that they want to eat and stick to it. Rlc Jessie Lee got a lot of attention last year because of its beautiful peach to orange flowers, and I divided it into 3 pieces. 2 of them were really nice big pieces that got sold off to members of my YouTube community. So if you were one of those lucky buyers, I hope that it's growing well for you, and I hope you've got some spikes pushing through the new leaves. It looks to me, even though the plant was really severely divided and I just was left with the back bulbs, it does look like there's something in that little sheath, and I wouldn't be surprised. These hybrids are very, very vigorous, strong growers. They want to grow, they want to bloom, and it looks like there is something in that teeny tiny little sheath down there. If we're lucky, we're going to have buds pushing out from Jessie Lee in the next month. Really excited about that. Did not expect to see flowers on her this year. One Cattleya rex that's kind of a mystery to me is this one. It actually bloomed this year, and so it got a name, Koichi. But you can see that something, it's weird. Last year it grew really well. Bulbs were fat and beautiful. Something happened to the roots or the plant or something so that it started shriveling up. The roots all died. And I thought, well, maybe I'd overwatered it, something like that over the winter. Very easy to do. And so this year it put out this new growth. It still bloomed with the energy and reserves still in the old pseudobulbs. And then it grew out a new root system. You can see there's still lots of actively growing roots in there. See this? All these new roots? And yet, look how shriveled it still is. Even the new growth is starting to shrivel. So I'm wondering if it just hasn't grown enough new roots to start sucking up water again, or I did spray my whole collection with copper fungicide, Phyton 27, about I don't know, several weeks ago, and it did seem to really adversely affect lots of roots. So it's possible the roots that had grown out were either killed or their function greatly diminished with that, and it's going to have to grow out new ones in order to replenish its supplies. But it is weird that just this one plant seems to be struggling to take up water. The rest of them are still pretty plump and doing fine. So just definitely keeping my eye on this. I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that it doesn't have some kind of a fungal infection. But because the leaves are very clean, you know. So I don't know. I don't think so. But definitely keeping an eye on this one and hoping that we can see those bulbs plump up this year or over the winter. Right next to it is Cattleya Jose Marti. This guy is also very shrivelly. Someone mentioned that a couple weeks ago. Why is it so shriveled up? I assume it's because it's put out 7 new growths in the past year, in the past season. It's got pushing out 4 right now. Typically what I see is when new growths are being pushed out, the plant really shrinks up because it's just pushing everything it can into those new growths. But again, I treated all my plants with a copper fungicide that does seem to have adversely affected the roots. So it could be struggling to take up water as well. I'm not sure. Still hoping to see flowers on this thing in the spring. Just another look at the seedlings. All Cattleya seedlings. Really doing pretty well. Some of them really putting out some nice big growth. The really exciting moment when growing Cattleya seedlings for me is when you see that first pseudobulb pop out. You can see that one's even got a new growth. These things are on fire. They just keep growing. I'm going to water them carefully, but still very regularly through the dry season. You can see these guys. They were not happy in their previous situation, but they seem to be growing some roots out and some new growths as well. They look a little bit better. These guys look a lot better. Multiple new growths on them. Lots of roots. That's what we like to see. Most of these are in little clay pots with no media. But because I water twice a day, sometimes more than that, they are okay. They get plenty of air around their roots, and the water that makes it into the little crevices is able to dry out as well, so they don't get rotted leaves. Even these little guys in this wooden pot, putting out lots of new leaves, look pretty good. And again, once we start seeing bigger leaves pushing out with pseudobulbs at the bases, we know that it's time to put them in their own little pots. This one's stuck to an antler. You can see I just Gorilla Glued it on there. I thought maybe the glue, because it is a chemical epoxy resin, I thought maybe it would could possibly damage the plant. It did not at all. It just sticks the plant very, very firmly to whatever you're mounting it to, so you don't have to worry about it coming off. That fat little root coming out there. They do like to be mounted. These are some larger seedlings, so this is what I have to look forward to. Once they start putting out those leaves with bulbs on them, then it's just a question of bigger and bigger and bigger until we finally get up to that blooming size. This Cattleya triani, still technically a seedling. You can see the older little seedling leaves down here, but every successive leaf has gotten bigger, and if we're really lucky, we might have a blooming sized plant next year. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you guys for stopping by. If there's any plants you want to see specifically, want me to focus on, or have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, have a great week, and we'll see you next time right here on My Green Pets. I'm William Green. See ya.